Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind podcast. This episode is with Josh Gibson. Josh is a weightlifting and powerlifting coach. He's also getting his PhD in some form of coaching, teaching, and learning. He told me the specific PhD he's getting at the University of West Virginia right now. He's worked with the football program and other programs at the University of West Virginia. He's also been a high school strength and conditioning coach. Me and Josh had a really great conversation about training, weightlifting, how amazing of a sport weightlifting is, and how it's also just a very empowering sport. The power of load and lifting throughout our lifespan and what it does for us both physically but also mentally. We also just kind of talked about our own mental health ebbs and flows, and a lot of philosophical talk about influences and learning. It was a really great conversation with Josh. I think if you're a coach, if you're a clinician, if you're a weightlifter, it's something that you'll very much enjoy. You can find Josh at Josh_Phil WL on Instagram. So again, that's JOSH_PHILWL on Instagram. He also has a ton of links and resources for his coaching service, ebooks, all sorts of awesome stuff from Josh. It was a great conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. Check it out. And if you are struggling with pain and injury, you want help with performance, and you're interested in working with me through Strength and Kindness Coaching, I'd love to help you out. Check me out on Instagram at dr.dave.strengthandkindness. Peace. Josh Gibson. I got to ask this question right away. Why is Olympic lifting so satisfying compared to... I like to lift, as again I mentioned this, like I'm mediocre at a lot of things, but squatting feels, when you figure out how to squat well, it starts to feel nice and fun. When you kind of figure out how to do some of this stuff, but Olympic lifts, like the first time you ever like do a good snatch, it like hooks you. What is that about for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say, and I actually explained this to someone recently, but I think it's such a technical expression of, I don't want to say maximal strength, because if we go like by definition, it wouldn't be a technical expression of maximal strength. It would be a different form of strength expression. I think it'd be more like explosive strength. But it's such a technical expression of strength and your ability to produce force. And just by the nature of the way the task is constrained, it's oddly satisfying. It's like, hey, grip this barbell and rip it and accelerate it so you can put it overhead. And the way you can end up doing that makes it look so beautiful and so coordinated and so fast and elegant. And it's kind of funny because scientists will often refer to experiments as being elegant. It's like, oh, this is a really elegant design. Yeah. Weightlifting is a really elegant sport. Yeah. I think at its nuts and bolts, it's just tension, force. And then when you see it done, you're like, that is graceful. And yeah, so I don't quite know, and I've thought about this before, like how did I spend my entire adult life learning about it to do it and then to teach it to others and then to create a career off of it.
Yeah, which is, I mean, frankly, man, that's like really dope. I fell in love with training kind of after high school, after I got out of the high school weight room, and I just went and started to do it for myself because I needed the physical outlet. And a lot of things, it's like when you see somebody who's strong, a lot of times in your brain you're like, well, they must just be gifted, or sorry, my dog's rattling over here, but they must just be gifted, or they're just strong. And like, yeah, there's some people who are strong. Like we know that there are people who they can produce force pretty easily. They can figure stuff out. But the first time I think I ever tried to do like a snatch, I just was like so humbled, right? Yeah. And like weightlifting is like one of those things. There's like a lot of things like where I think your average couch potato dude kind of thinks they can like, oh, I could do something like that, right? Yeah. And it's like, no, you can't. Yeah. Like it's so hard and it's so technical, and it's also, that's what, like you said, it makes it really fun, is like when you start to learn it and do it, and like you execute, like you're chasing something and then you execute it and then you immediately want to get even better, right?
Yeah, and I think that idea, and I didn't spend any of my childhood being athletic, besides skateboarding, which I did that relatively okay. But I never really like learned to sprint or learned to run, and I imagine it's how people feel when they sprint. It's something that you can really only train kind of infrequently if you're like going to maximum. Like if you're full out, full tilt sprinting, like you're not going to do a ton of volume at like 100%, especially over long distances. So you kind of have to be careful where you like pick your spots. But that idea of being able to work on, arm swing, like leg angle, like ground contact, stride length, body position when you're coming out of the first step. I think like that ability to just find the details and the nuts and bolts of something that's very, very skilled and requires a lot of raw expression of just like your physiology. I think that's kind of the beautiful intersection of it. And it's funny enough, but I didn't have a background in sports or athletics, so it's interesting finding this. And I felt like when I started, I was actually okay at it. I remember first day I snatched. So like I would snatch to warm up, and I would use like those straight bars people curl with that are like really short. So I had like a really narrow grip. I would bang the bar off my thighs, and I used metal plates. I remember vividly. I was standing in front of the mirror because I was in a commercial gym, and I was snatching. And a guy came up to me. He's like, "Hey, could you not snatch in front of the mirrors?" And I was offended by that. Like, oh, like who are you to tell me to move and whatever? And it's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be snatching with metal plates, not knowing what I'm doing in front of a pane of glass on the wall. Yeah. But then I remember when I snatched like for the first time, and I had a normal grip, and I did a full squat. I did like 60 kilos. And it was like rock bottom position. Like I caught it butt on the ground, and I was like, oh, this is badass. This is badass. Yeah. And that was the trajectory. And I found a lot of success quickly. And I remember I snatched like 111, so like 242 pounds, after like, I don't know, like 10 months. And I was like, okay, I've kind of like got a hang of this. And then just decided to go all in. And it's the same thing with, and I know you're a big proponent, if we want to call it like evidence-based, or evidence-informed, like, practice or training or whatever. But just kind of being informed by whatever evidence we have available that we think is like, of the highest, of the most considerable quality. And I remember I got really hooked by evidence-based training. I would watch Eric Helms, and I'd watch Alberto Nunez, and I'd watch Matt Ogus and Lane Norton, and I was like, I don't know why, but this resonates. This like speaks to me. This idea of using logic and reason and science. And it's the same thing with weightlifting. I don't know why. And then I find myself, having coached weightlifting and weightlifters at every level in the U.S. for about a decade, and then I'm basically getting a PhD, and it's like, oh, I don't know why I'm doing these things. It's just something that hooked me from the start.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk like a little bit more. How old are you now?
I am 33.
33. Okay, so when was your first? When did you hit that like 60 kilo butt to ground snatch that you're talking about? Like when was that?
So I started weightlifting, I'd say like formally in 2014.
2014.
So about 12 years ago.
12 years ago. So you were like 21, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Like, yeah, and then I mean, you said you snatched 110 kilos within like a year of that like trajectory.
Yeah, because guy's name's John North. He's like a huge name in Olympic weightlifting. He set the kind of, I mentioned Eric Helms, I mentioned Alberto Nunez, Matt Ogus. John North helps set a lot of the groundwork for weightlifting and getting people interested in the sport. Yeah. And getting them like energized and excited. And he's still, I saw him at the Arnold, and he said hi to me. And, he's just a huge part of the culture of weightlifting. And he got me really interested in it. I remember he said on a podcast, and hey, this is something, for everyone to consider. You don't always know the impact of what you're going to say on other people's kind of like life outcomes. He said, it took me 6 months to snatch 100 kilos. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to try to do it in less time. And I think I ended up snatching it in like 5 or 6. And I was like, holy shit, I think I just beat John North to a 100 kilo snatch. Yeah. Now, he reached a higher top end, but that was something that really drove me to try and, excel early on and really, I guess kind of realize whatever ability I had, as far as weightlifting goes.
Well, I think like there's something to that. I mean, as I train in my garage. It's Iowa. It's like alone. I'm alone. I enjoy the practice of it. And honestly, I say this too much on my podcast, but a lot of my first exposures in the weight room in high school kind of reinforced almost that like I wasn't good at it. And I think there's been a long time of unwinding that narrative in my own brain, right? And I don't know if this is a true story or not, but I think me and another a buddy of mine were talking. And there's like a gym somewhere in Europe where it's like you go in there and every woman snatches like 70 kilos, right? So like the standard, like the women are snatching 70 kilos, and that's pretty dope, right? The dudes everybody's snatching 100. Like if that's the standard and that you inject yourself into, like if you stick around, you got to figure out how to get up to that standard pretty quick, right? And like, yeah, man, I remember watching Cal Strength videos of Johnny Schenkel and John North, and I actually like, I drove to California when I was 22, and I went to Greg Everett's gym for like 3 or 4 months. And Greg was super nice to me, and he's like, dude, you're not very mobile and you're not very strong. and so this is going to be hard, but I showed up and I trained, and I got better, and it injected this love of doing it. I think that's one of my big things is like, I'm not, if I would have like squatted 405 within like my first 6 months of training or something like that, I don't think I would care nearly as much as I do now. Right.
Totally.
And so you go through that trajectory of, you know, you really have found it and you enjoy it. What, well, like, the philosophical weightlifting podcast, like, what is it about, like, why did you name it that, right? Like, it's not like what is it philosophically? Is it just talking about weightlifting? Like, I'm a huge philosophy nerd. I like to think and pontificate and all this type of stuff, but what brought you to be like, I want to talk about weightlifting all the time?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is again, it's we can only kind of connect and find patterns after the fact. I mean, you can't really, you can't like, you can't, you kind of have to work your way to find them. And after the fact, you can kind of connect dots and create whatever image you want to create. And given that's kind of that's what humans are really good at, like finding patterns, trying to make sense of things. And I always looked back, until recently I looked back and I was kind of disappointed in the name I chose. I'm like, philosophical weightlifting is kind of a mouthful and it's hard to type. Hopefully no one takes my laptop from me, but like my password is philosophical weightlifting 1 on my laptop. And every time I type it incorrectly. So it's like, okay, it's not necessarily, and when people talk about naming like restaurants or businesses, it's like Tim's, Joe's, Ed, and it's like something simple, memorable. Philosophical weightlifting is not that. It is memorable. And what I'll say is, I would always look back on it and be kind of like, I wish I would have picked something a little more like sharp, a little easier, a little more like, I don't know, maybe like mainstream. But it originated from this, similar to like the evidence-based training thing. I enrolled in college initially when I was 18, and I dropped out after like a year and a half. And I had no sense of what I wanted to do. I just kind of made up. I made up a kind of life trajectory based on what I thought my family would have liked. It's like, okay, when I told them, well, I get positive affirmations and reinforcement, and that's what I chose. Yeah. And all I did really was, get really hammered and smoke a lot of pot. And then I was like, okay, this is not for me, and I'm kind of done with it, and I don't want to do this anymore. So after a year and a half, I dropped out. Around that time point, I started listening to a lot of like Tupac Shakur music. So Tupac's music is a rapper in the 90s. And he was also an actor. And I think a movie he played in was called Above the Rim. I remember watching that. And I was like on Google one day or on the internet, and I was like, somehow stumbled upon the list of books that Tupac read in prison. How niche is that? Like, 10 books he read in prison. And I started reading them. And I read, and this is the way I connect the dots in my mind. I read Martin Luther King Jr.'s autobiography, and I think he talks about philosophy in that book. And I remember encountering the word and thinking, I have no idea what this means. I don't actually know what philosophy is. Fast forward a little bit, and I re-enrolled back in school, found evidence-based bodybuilding and strength training. And then I started going to the library, the public library and the library at the community college, and started checking out like philosophy books. And I found Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The first philosophy book I ever read. I remember reading it and thinking like, holy shit, this is a game changer. And it's something where we all have our own lived experience. I mean, it's why phenomenology as a field of like inquiry exists.
Yeah.
And and I read it and I was like, wow, this resonates. And I didn't imagine people could think outside of themselves in the way Marcus Aurelius did. The book kind of opens with like, you're going to wake up and face people who are like angry and kind of shitty toward you, and bad stuff's going to happen. And in the face of it, you kind of just have to like accept that that's the nature of things. And you don't want to get, hot headed or kind of lose your own mind dealing with it. He basically goes on to draw out stoicism. But I read that and I was like, this is fucking awesome. I read Lucretius on the nature of things and I was like, this is fucking awesome. He's talking about like why things are the way they are in nature. And then that kind of just like broadened and branched into like neuroscience and psychology and like deeper philosophy like Seneca. And I tried to read like Descartes. It's like impossible, you're not a philosopher. And so I just like that through line has continued to the point where like before this, I was listening to a podcast about Franz Kafka, who kind of wrote books with a lot of like existential themes. I've been reading a lot of like Albert Camus, but I absolutely love that stuff because it takes all of our lived experiences and says like, we're going to kind of dissect it, try to make sense of it, and then establish a framework, which is basically philosophy of like ethics and, all these other fields, epistemology, and try to make sense of it and like then reconstruct it. So I got super interested in that, and then I fucking love slamming barbells, like heavy barbells. And I'm like, okay, philosophical weightlifting is this like thoughtful approach to thinking about training, but also thinking about like why things are the way they are so we can train, and why it's like meaningful to do that and not something else, if that makes sense.
Well, I think training is like one of my most profound analogies for life. Like most of it is, I mean, let's just be like, you obviously got like good results in a fast amount of time, right? But like now you almost have to you have to reconcile like, okay, when progress slows down, like why do I keep doing this, right? Which that's a lot of things in life are like that, right? Even, I kind of made this like general thought experiment, like even if I never set like a personal record again, which is not actually true. I mean, I'm 37, and I actually think, honestly, in a lot of ways, like a lot of my best days are ahead of me because I'm finally learning to be like patient and like trusting a process. And I also just have learned like, dude, it's crazy because Stoicism is like neuroscience, like from 2,000 years ago. Like they were literally saying like neuroscientifically, like observationally what humans are like, right? And we're just confirming it more and more. And people's criticisms are stoicism kind of, they look at it like it's like not emotional, and it's like, no, they were emotional. Like they were just reconciling the fact that you like emotions are part of being human, and you have to like use them and learn to manage them well, right? But man, like training is just, it's like, well, first and foremost, in our day and age, I see just a lot of it, and I know this with myself. It's like it's very easy to get pulled around in a lot of different directions, and like that's okay.
Totally,
that's great. You can run. You can like, I really enjoyed doing CrossFit for a while. I just realized that like a lot of my problems in CrossFit were that I wasn't very strong, right? And so it's like, hey, do you want to dedicate some time and focus, or frankly, do you just want to be okay with continuing to plug away, and over time you're probably going to get stronger there too, right? So it's like allocation of energy and allocation of focus, and then reconciling the fact that like you mentioned, being evidence-based in our day and age and more is just kind of recognizing that there's a lot of freaking ways to do things.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think velocity-based training is dope. We're just trying to get more and more objective with our decision making, I think, which is probably good. But then there's just also a sense of like training should be fun, and if you're always measuring everything all the time, maybe it's not going to be fun for you for a period of time, right? And so it's like, how do we navigate those things? So it kind of segues me into like, well, how'd you link up with Max Ada, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's how
Max Ada,
right?
yeah.
So I think I met Max once. He probably never remembers that. It was at like, I think either like it was like a weightlifting thing or whatever. But how did you link up with him? Because he's been coaching for a long time. He was in like those early. I remember Max doing like a 500-pound squat like every day for like a period of time or like something like that. But he's obviously been coaching a long time, and like, how'd you link up with him, and then how has he influenced you, if he has?
Yeah, he has tremendously. And I've been reading a lot of Dostoevsky, which is like a Russian writer from like the 1800s. And in one of his books, it's in the introduction. It's Crime and Punishment. In the introduction, he basically was at a literary critic's house, and he was leaving, and the literary critic gave him a lot of praise. And it was like, you're like an incredible writer, one of the best, foremost, et cetera, et cetera. And he was saying as he was leaving the house, he was thinking about that. And like that feeling of euphoria he had thinking about the praise he was just giving. He ended up serving a term in prison in Siberia for like political whatever, and the government like cracked down on him. And he said that fortified him in prison, is that thought of like that what the literary critic said to him, that fortified him in Siberia when he was in prison serving his term.
That's wild.
Max said something to me when I was like walking with him to the back room. I think it was like an American Open finals, and he's like, "You're one of the smartest people I know." And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like that hits different. So like Max is a huge influence of mine. It's had a massive impact on my life. I mean, 3 years ago, before starting this program at WVU, I moved across the country. Like I literally was in Columbus. I could tell the entire story if you want, but like I moved across the country, lived on his red couch for like 2 months, and worked with him for a year. It was like halfway during that, I was like, I got to re-enroll in school and get like a stable something and figure out my future in life, which now I'm actually like heavily contemplating, if not pretty certain, I'm going to move back out and work with him and live in San Francisco. But yeah, we've been coaching together for like 4 years, creating content, like writing ebooks, doing podcasts, doing seminars, and the way he thinks about training is almost identical to the way I think about training. Super logical, super like pretty literal, and very just like, I want to know as much as humanly possible and make sense of it all. And I think to your point where you talk about, at the heart of it, like lifting weights is the most important thing. The weight on the bar is secondary to that. Everything else is secondary. Your technique necessarily is secondary. And I talk about this when I talk about athletes developing strength when they're weaker and younger, is load is the number one thing. Load is the most important driver for us of results. And I think for people's health and like well-being, like load is very important, and load through bigger ranges of motion and different body parts and different movement planes. Like it's super critical to maintaining function across time. And I'd like to think, I try to think about things in ways that are explainable and understandable. So when I think about training, it's like I need to understand it. I need to be able to make sense of it so I can have a rationale for why I write programs the way I program. And I went as far as saying, like, I went down this whole acceptance and commitment therapy kind of rabbit hole with Stephen Hayes, who's like just a OG.
A lot of things help, but acceptance and commitment therapy was probably the form of therapy that resonated with me when I was really depressed. Yeah. Because it was like, I honestly, just really briefly, I was just in a place where I was intellectually driving myself crazy in 2020, right? A lot of factors were involved in that. But when it was like, okay, what are your values? I'm like, what? So you don't even know your values as a human being. So if you don't know your values, then what's your compass? How do you? And it was like when I started to understand, like, acceptance of my life as it currently was and orient around the values. And there's a lot more aspects of Stephen Hayes' like the acceptance commitment of therapy approach. But man, freaking life changing. Yeah. And that's like a lot of like creating structure for people in training is not that different, right? In some way, there's some carryover there, in my opinion.
No, I think that's awesome, and you actually hit on what I was kind of working my way towards, which is I went as far as to say like my values are physical health, like physical, kind of call it emotional, intellectual well being, and resistance training is like a huge part of that, you
Yeah.
know. And like I have two more. I'd say like relationships with other people, connection with other people, and then it would be like curiosity, like
Yeah.
being open
Yeah.
to ideas and experience. And like the way my brain kind of works, like, okay, I want to make sense of this thing. I want to be able to explain it and understand it. And it's exactly what you said. It's like, okay, I have these values that kind of are the crux of like the way I operate day to day. Like before this podcast, I had a salad. It's like, okay, like I'm working towards like living my values. I'm gonna train tomorrow. I didn't train today because I didn't want to interfere with this episode, and I'm training tomorrow, and that's like a really important thing. And I think getting people to also have those values and see those as the most like preeminent thing, the most preeminent aspect of their life, and everything else can be secondary and tertiary and underneath that. And so kind of a tangent because you were talking about that to start, and I was like, oh, I want to touch on like the importance
Yeah.
of values and training. But yeah, with Max, I was able to because we have similar like frames of thinking, ways of thinking. We love talking about training, and we absolutely love coffee. So like his
Yeah.
his way to like bribe me to move back out is like I have two espresso machines at the gym. Like we could make Americanos like every day and just talk
Yeah.
training and coach. So he's a huge influence. And I'll just backtrack a little bit. The way we actually ended up working together is we did a couple of podcasts together, Weightlifting House. So Seb and I went on a tour for Weightlifting House in like 2019, and we went all up and down California, and we hit Waxman's Gym, Cal Strength, we hit Marin Heavy Athletics, and we hit Max's gym. So I like met Max in person after reading some of his ebooks, and then after doing a couple of podcasts with him. And then we met again at the Arnold in 2022, and he was showing me Weightlifting AI, which is an app he had created. And then, like, fast forward a little bit more, we created content, talked a ton, and we were in Las Vegas for Powerlifting Nationals, and we were sitting across from each other in a coffee shop. And he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to run my gym," and I had this like background back where I lived of like things becoming chaotic and needing to change and kind of like I need to like change my life and shake things up. And I was like, Max, put a pin in that. When I get back to Columbus, I'll call you. I called them 2 weeks later, packed up my car, moved out, and started coaching at his gym. So we're really really tight. We're really
I
really
love
tight.
that.
Yeah,
That's
he's awesome. He's awesome.
Well, so let's touch on one of the things that like coaching, and you're obviously getting a PhD in teaching and coaching and
Yeah.
and aspects of that. Like one of my did you work with a coach early on, or were you like self-taught through your initial experiences?
Yeah, so I worked with coaches. I would say uh like intermittently. Like I got help with my technique. It's probably a few months, and then I started working with Glenn, and got like programming from Glenn. He didn't give any like technical feedback. His coaching is like jump and catch whatever.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and he was kind of like it was after he had his stroke and his eyesight was pretty bad, and he was like kind of struggling a little bit. So I got programming from Glenn. I had my coach I learned weightlifting from initially, Chelsea Dillon. And then I think along the way, just kind of like touch and go kinds of relationships. But honestly, as far as like my knowledge of training theory, I was talking to a kid who called me because he was like doing a project for a class, and he had this question of like, which are the most valuable certifications or degrees that you have? I thought to myself like none of them are useful at all, and I'm entirely self-taught. And like that's not a flex. It's like like the first textbook I read cover to cover is Principles and Practice of Resistance Training by Stone and Sands. I read Brad Schoenfeld's textbook on muscle hypertrophy. Like I've read more research articles than I probably would care to even think about, and it's just out of pure interest. And I think like I've like gone through programs like academic programs, and I'll say like I mean, you could probably teach yourself better, like more effectively, if you're really,
Yeah.
really deeply interested. So I kind of just taught myself and all the technique stuff. There's a book by Artie Dreschler called The Encyclopedia of Weightlifting,
Hmm.
and it breaks technique down in a very understandable way.
Yeah.
Russian manuals. There's like another one, I forget what it's called, but like breaks technique down in a super understandable way. And then there's a paper by Shaim Chavda, Anna Swisher, Stu, losing his name, Stu. And it's like an applied model for understanding technique or something. And
Hmm.
it's like, it breaks it down so well into phases and aspects of like body positioning and what to look for, and apply some language to it, like common language to it. So,
Do you
yeah.
do you differentiate between like programming and coaching, or is that are they like that's like a long term conversation with both? A lot of people will run a program without ever like necessarily getting like coached,
Yeah.
right? Powerlifting's like this.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things are like this, right? And in our field, I don't know what the percent of people that like who actually gets through a 12-week program? Like, dude, like, let's be honest. Like, right? Like,
Yeah. It's hard.
somebody buys the amount of programs that I've bought from people. I'm like, okay, this is what this is. And, like, it's great. But, like, did I ever actually run them? And there is some amount of, like, when you actually do commit in, like, periodization theory has kind of been broken down. John Keely's work is, like, pretty much like, yeah, it just doesn't happen the way we, like, want it to as neatly, right? But if you do commit to like a process over the course of 12 weeks, good things are probably going to happen, right? It's just not as neat. But like I kind of think there's this in my mind it's like programming is like kind of the language you're trying to communicate with somebody, but like coaching is like using that language really well, right? So, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you want to get me really fired up, you should ask this question because I've a very strong opinion, and I'll start with I love like anecdotes and I love like background information and setting the stage for it. And I was coaching, so I drove to Columbus, Ohio from Morgantown because I was going to a concert. I have two athletes who are prepping for the Arnold, where they're like a week out. It's their last heavy day. It's on a Saturday. I'm like, hey, I texted Leah. I was like, hey, I can get there at 2. And she's like, yeah, but if you get there too late, I can't train, so I'm gonna go in the morning. And I was like, Leah, we're a week out from the Arnold. I'm going to fucking coach you up. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to be like, oh, it's too late. I can't make it. Like,
Yeah.
that just like, there's no room for that.
Yeah.
Because what that's telling me is coaching isn't as important as like, I have an obligation at 3 and I don't need coaching. And it's like, yeah, it's something that is kind of just off in the corner and you can kind of do away with. So when I showed up, she was there and Emily, they were there. And I coached her and I was like, okay, we're going to aim to go heavy. But if you're not looking sharp, we'll do 3 singles at your opener, and maybe we'll go up a kilo here. We'll do this, and she had a great session, and she ended up fucking smashing a clean and jerk that was like beautifully done. And I was like, listen, I've been coaching from like a grassroots level, people who are just casually interested or have never done weightlifting, to the world level. I've been in like Division 1 weight rooms with like football and like interned. And I've ran like a high school strength and conditioning program for years. Like if I can't provide you above and beyond what you would get by yourself or with, a program or something, if I can't provide you with an above and beyond service, there's something wrong with me. Like literally I'm like defective as a coach. Because when I'm there, there should be a tangible difference of like how the room feels, how you feel, how you move, the quality of your training. I think when people think about coaching, it's like cueing and correcting, but you should think of coaching as like helping you realize the best in yourself, like helping
Yeah.
you actually realize your potential, and a lot goes into that, and a lot, like
Yeah.
a lot, which is why Sophia Jowett has done a tremendous amount of research on the coach-athlete relationship over the past 20 years. It's like,
Yeah.
why is that a meaningful thing to study? It's like because it has a huge impact on athlete outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I just to go along with that, like because I work with a lot of people virtually, right?
Yeah.
And would I the big reason I've never opened a gym currently is just because like gyms are really like cultural hubs,
Yeah.
right? You want to get the culture right. Like, frankly, a lot of my first coaching gigs were in CrossFit gyms, and like, some of them were good, some of them weren't great. Like, there was good energy sometimes, but it was really like, what was the culture of the overarching gym, right? And then like even like Cal Strength, like I don't know exactly what that was like, but there was a culture there, right?
Yeah.
And like John North and Donnie Schenkel were doing something, and but like it when you're in person with an athlete, like this is one of the reasons that I really like, I traveled to the Arnold for my client, right? My lifter, and like, I have other life obligations, but like it's her opportunity to like do well, and just being there and like being calm and reinforcing like, yeah, okay, like that looked good. Like it's crazy how these little touch points are what stacks, right? I think a lot of people think like coaching is like that I'm gonna tell you a novel like after you did that fucking squat. It's like, no, like if it was good, it was good. If it was like, I just actually had I have like a group of 7 to 8 people that come on Tuesday nights. It was right before this, and like most of it is just like these 1 to 2 little things that are like high leverage, right? Or like honestly, just telling somebody like, yeah, like that was really good. Put more weight on the bar and let's do the exact same thing again, right? Which they wouldn't necessarily think to do that. Or it's like, yeah, you're just not moving great today, so let's just drop off 10% and just make it a good crisp session, and that's cool, right? So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Even on the digital side or on the virtual side, it's like, it's just the reinforcement of the positives that are going well, and like making little tweaks to a quote unquote program that the person would they'd make a giant tweak on their own, or they would just stick with something that's just not fucking working for them, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you're making a lot of great points, and I think what you're kind of hammering in on is like coaching as being like closely connected, if not like entirely leadership. It's like the ability to like lead and the ability to like understand a situation, read it. And the comparison that kind of comes to mind is the work from John Gottman on like relationships. And people might think like, oh, I don't need to read literature or like books on relationships. Like I'm good. And it's like people aren't hardwired to be like optimized for anything. Like people like they're kind of born with like whatever and all this like stuff, and then like their life experiences kind of help shape it. But you're not hardwired to be like, oh, I understand how to be like perspective taking and empathetic and like considerate and how to approach a conversation in like a respectful way. So it's like, okay, well, those are things you can like read about and understand and learn. Well, if that's the case, it's kind of the same with leadership and coaching. It's like, oh, I can like read and understand and learn how to be like a more effective leader, how to create a culture, how to like communicate with someone that's respectful and supports them and like lifts them up and gets out of them ultimately what you both want to get out of them, which is like, hey, let's put a couple more kilos on the bar and tighten up our technique. Fucking full send, like, and I think people, they can do that. And I think maybe people have this image of coaching as like, it's either like neutral or it's negative, instead of like it's neutral, it's negative, or it's like highly positive. And the best coaches, can really pull out like really cool performances because they match the energy of the person. Yeah. They also know the intricacies of the sport. So like they know how to count in the back room. They know how to pick warm-ups. They know timing. They like know how to like play the game. And then they can say like, for you, I'm going to be very, very calm because that's what you want. And you can probably be overstimulated pretty easily. And then for someone else, let's rip some nose toward, get smacked on the back, light it up, get fired up. So
yeah, that's one thing I've had to learn to do because I'm a pretty even keel person, and some people do need like a little bit like, all right, let's get hyped up, and that's fine. I like, my idea of like good weight room music is like Motown or like like kind of poppy shit, whereas some people it's like they want to hear screamo death metal, and that's fine, like
guilty.
So yeah, I mean it's all good. It's just that's the reason that there's individualization and like you mentioned the John Gottman stuff. I mean, I posted a post on Instagram the other day. Like I pulled out like basically any textbook I have in reach.
Yeah, I saw that.
And And the ones that are most like again, a lot of good textbooks, a lot of really meaningful stuff. Like I literally, Dan Cleather. Do you follow Dan Cleather right now? Like
Yeah.
this book is so freaking good. Like the
Oh, cool.
Little Black
Yeah.
Book of Training Wisdom. And I accidentally bought a copy. I was sending it to a person and I sent it to myself on accident. But like, but it's the motivational interviewing shit.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
totally.
the honestly, Jocko Willink Extreme Ownership is where a lot of just like prioritize and execute type of mentality comes down. It's a lot of these like psychology books and human behavior books that like, yes, the training principles and the technical stuff really matters, but it's like you're working with a human and you got to figure out what makes that human confident. And so this is a good transition to like collegiate weight rooms. What teams are you working with right now?
So I interned with the football team at WVU, and then
Nice.
and then for my graduate assistantship, I'm a high school strength coach. So I work
Nice.
with like girls soccer, boys lacrosse, football, baseball, tennis. So yeah, a variety of
Yeah.
sports.
Well, like, I mean, and so I always look at, you see the hype that can get going in like a high school or a collegiate football team's weight room, and it's like it's pretty freaking dope. Like when you have 50 guys or 40 guys cheering on somebody else to like go for a rep max, and like that's not every session. Those are usually like testing weeks type of things, but like it kind of shows you the power of like getting up to do something cool,
Totally.
right? And that's not just what being a collegiate strength and conditioning coach is per se, but there is like bringing the energy, being a leader, being intentional. Because I don't know about you, but man, like when I'm intentional I'm sure that you're this way. I'm sure you're very this way just based on talking to you. But like when I'm actually like dialed in and focused on training that day, it usually goes pretty well. When I'm like spacey and I've got like 7 other things freaking going through my brain, usually not the best session, right? So like, what are your thoughts? Like, what have you taken away from being in the collegiate in weight rooms throughout your career? Is probably a good way to think about it with teams, and how is that maybe different from like somebody maybe trying to pursue it? And this isn't good or bad, but like training on your own and not having that environment around you type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, first, I think a few things that come to mind. One, I almost get too locked in and too intentional. I need to like chill a little bit. I would say that like a long term perspective is like huge, and I've been I tell people now, like if I could put a team on my resume that I've worked with, like I would take the baseball team from the high school and I'd put them on my resume because I've been working with them since December of last year, and there's like a change in head coaching, and the new head coach he wanted them to be in the weight room and prioritize that. And as soon as that started, because we had finished up the season, he had started getting them in during the season. So it was basically started getting them in. They were in during the season, and then after that, he's like, "All right, we're gonna like develop these kids." And we had a lot of freshmen. Had a lot of young guys, and we just kind of like a team that was like really kind of like, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but like skinny and weak.
Yeah.
They were like untrained.
Yeah.
And I've worked with them 3 days a week since, and the number of kids now, we probably have squatting like 315 pounds who are like 150, 140, 160, 170. The amount of guys, cleaning 205, 215, 225. And their ability to like move a barbell and move well and look athletic doing it, and then just be competent and then provide good energy, communicate well. Like it's a different feel, and watching that unfold over a year is so different than like hyper fixating on something, which is what I probably would have done to start, of like, this thing needs to be perfect. Why isn't the weight on the bar going up? Like we need to figure out how to like make progress.
Yeah.
And it's, with kids, like you just have to teach them how to move, teach them the culture, and like allow time to kind of run its course. There's a Voltaire quote, and he uses this in terms of like medicine and health.
Medicine, the art of medicine.
Yeah, the art of medicine.
You say it. But,
yeah. Well, now I'm gonna probably misremember it, but it's something along the lines of like the art of medicine is allowing time to, heal whatever it is.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna correct you now, Josh. I think it's distracting the patient while nature runs its course or something around that. Like this distract.
I like that more.
I mean, I think about that all the time. I had Jim Wendler on my podcast like a year ago, which is like, it was freaking dope. Like, yeah, like and I don't even know why he came on. Like, this, you're gonna get like 15 to 20 views, dude, which is fine. Like, that's the game. But I do get a good amount of downloads on Spotify. But he came on and he's like, you know what? Since I've been, he's like, it's just so fun to work with these high school kids and like get them energized and like, you know, they're knuckleheads, right? But and this has kind of been intersecting this has been going through my brain for like a year, and then I've been listening to a lot of Matt McInnes Watson. I've been taking Matt McInnes Watson's like plyo course, and you know, Matt kind of talks about just a lot of like let people do a lot of like easy movement, right? And like let them just like start to figure out, like, especially with plyos, like it doesn't have to be crazy, send it all the time, right? Like it's kind of like a polarized approach, meaning like a lot of easy with a little bit of hard. And Windler was basically like, you know, it's crazy because I like, if you remember the 5-3-1, it's like, yeah, you have like your training max, you drop 10% off of like what you actually could do, and you work from there. He's like, I actually go down to like 80% or 75% with a lot of these kids. And, you know, there's one kid who I think he said he never benched over like 185, and then he came in and like cranked out 225 for like 7 or 8 reps, you know, and it's like, it's kind of figuring out how to just teach him to move well and like not just gas him and like let him express some stuff. And I think my problem my whole life has like been, I'm a hard worker. I'm the hardest worker in the room type of kid, which is good and bad. But like, you know, I'd get done with a football practice and I'd go run 5 miles. And it's like, yeah, like, dude, but that's not going to get you stronger per se. It's like showing you're working hard. But yeah, like there's a lot of that where if we keep the weekly wins going or the daily wins or the, you know, and we just let it stack over the course of a year, it's like, holy shit, that person's a different human, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's, and people will probably say like, don't overcomplicate training. It's not that blah, blah, blah. It's like also fine. You can say that. But if you have a really foundational, very well educated understanding of training, like not educated, but like well experienced understanding of training. Like you've read the literature, you know the theory, read textbooks, you've like talked to coaches, you've interned, you've seen programs. Like my aha moments with training, one was like in a living room. I think I was vacuuming, listening to Mike Israel on a podcast, and he said like, "Oh, you can do 4 sets of 6 or 6 sets of 4," and I'm like, "Holy shit! I understand training now, so I don't have to write a 5x5 because it's the Texas method. I can write a 5x5 because like it's the adaptation I want."
Yeah.
And like those things are like tangibly different. And the better you get at manipulating a program, which is hard now because when I think about switching into the aerobic space or conditioning or speed work, I'm like, the amount of work I'd have to put into understanding it like I do resistance training, that has to be insane. Like that has to be so much time. Because resistance training now to me is like, what does the person need? What's my process? What's my template? How do I modify it? How am I individualizing it? And it's like, now I can like channel and funnel to where you get something. I'm like, oh, this is like a badass program. This makes a ton of sense and it's going to get them better. And I'm more confident than chance it's going to get them better. But that took a lot of time, and it took a lot of watching it took a lot of watching that stuff unfold. It's same thing with the high school kids. Like I could say, well, just give them time, but it's like you also have to give them time with like not terrible coaching and a not terrible program. Like they have to do something that makes 100%. Sense. Yeah. And you have to have enough time and experience to say, if this thing runs its course, we'll improve.
Yeah.
And we'll improve like better than not, and hopefully more than not. And that's just like a lot. That's where I think people say like, oh, that guy's got a lot of coaching experience. That's actually what they mean, is they just have seen so many reps of people developing. And those reps of development are just as important as like reps of technique and, writing a program. It's like reps of development is like, what are the major patterns you're picking up in terms of like, I give this person this and they blow up, or I give this person this and they kind of get worse. And it's like figuring out why that happens.
Yeah. That's really good, like, oh man, and even just like we've kind of touched on a lot of things, but even like with like mental health, right? Like figuring out like what resonated with me in that space, like, because you could go to therapy. Let's be honest, you could go to therapy for years and never actually have anything resonate and you do anything to actually improve your life, right?
Yeah, totally.
And to like quote unquote regulate yourself, right? I use this I try to like make it make sense. And like, so my brother, like I actually had pretty bad migraines too when I was like going through my stuff, and it's like, well, what is that? Well, like, man, it's kind of like tension in the body creates some tension in your mind type of thing, right? And I know that's a little woo woo, but like when you're like thinking your face off because you're just stewing. And my brother was actually like post COVID. He was like, you know, humans also can take any like symptom and take it to the worst place in the world. And my brother was like, I've been having headaches for like 6 months, and you know, I'm like, they're just getting like, they're not getting worse per se, but they're just so persistent. And I think I'm gonna go to the doctor. I think I should like, and I'm like, what are you concerned about? And he's like, I don't know. I hope maybe I have a tumor, right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. But I'm like, dude, like, do you do any, like, and I'm like, he's like, I meditate, and I'm like, what else do you do? And it's like, I exercise, and I'm like, so here's the thing. I'm not saying that stuff is not beneficial for you, but like, my brother was a pretty good golfer, and I'm like, a lot of people go out and they play. It's like they practice this stuff the same way that dudes play golf every Friday or Saturday. They go out and they drink beer and they never get more intentional, and they stay the exact same for 30 years. Yeah. It's enjoyable, and it's good that they did it. But I'm like, to actually get good at golf requires you to like get intentional and like learn and create feedback loops, right? Yeah. And like that kind of resonated. And he didn't go back. I mean, hopefully I didn't cause him any. He's doing fine now, but like he started to like honestly like stretch and like work on. Awesome. He also like zoomed out from the fact like he's an architect, and he like works a lot. Like and it's kind of high pressure type of stuff. And it's like and he also has 2 young kids. And this was like end of 24, and like one of his kids has a pulmonary condition. So like 2 years of worrying about pulmonary conditions, and it's like it's that same feel. Like, because what you're talking about with like, yeah, you see a program, and like you have to, like, so much of the internet is you run this program to get this result. And like I think what you're saying is like, well, yeah, like, but there's other ways to do that. And I care about the stimulus that I'm delivering, and I know how to deliver that in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, it's and I think this is, I love Mike Teixeira stuff, but I think he would say like, and I would say this, but maybe Mike wouldn't, but like, you run the program to get a result so you can do another program, and then like either get the same result or refine it. So it's like the result is like a means to an end. And I think a lot of people see it as an end itself. And in reality, when I do it, it's like, all right, let's train. Okay, what's happening? It's like, okay, this training is shit. Or it's like, this is really good. You know, it's like, all right, now this is like good data for like afterward when we want to run it back. We can tweak it and kind of modify it to like get an even better outcome. And I think and sometimes you double down on something because it makes sense. But I actually like what you said about, being intentional and doing something for the sake of like doing it better, or doing it for the the right reasons, or like a specific reason. And I've actually been seeing a therapist for like 3 years now, and whenever she's like, hey, do you want to see each other less frequently? Do you still think you need to see me? I think about it from the standpoint of, well, my life is going to change, and I'm going to encounter things that maybe I don't feel prepared for. So I'd love to continue working through this stuff now, and also having you as someone I see as a consistent provider, so I can, talk through it when I encounter it. But most of it, I would say, honestly, comes down to communication, and I think being vulnerable with other people, but also like being true to myself in the situation. And I really struggled when I was younger with like social anxiety. Like I would I'd like miss class, or I'd be late to class, and I'd walk up to the door and like look in, and I couldn't bring myself to walk into the classroom because everyone would look at me, and then I'd be like, that would be an overwhelming feeling that I would not like. So I just like dip out and leave and not go. So a lot of it now is like, I need to bring up things that are painful or hard to bring up. I need to talk through them, and I need to also be respectful of conversation is something that's like an active thing. Yeah. I'm not just kind of like checked out saying shit, So I find therapy to be hugely important for that, and that all comes at this base of like intention. So I love the fact
Yeah.
you brought that up. And your own like mental health struggles, I think that's important for people to hear about and like
Oh yeah,
understand.
man. It's an everyday thing, and I mean, the only reason I don't talk with a therapist, probably as much as I probably should, is because, in a lot of ways, I just, I mean, like being married, like my wife has become like a very good outlet for like some of the social angst, and honestly,
Mm,
even just in our space, like kind of the ego angst. Like
mm.
sometimes I'll be like, "This pisses me off," and she's like, "Why?" And like if
Yeah,
you don't have somebody to talk about with that, right, and in like either coaching or
yeah,
in your professional life, and not to say like everybody hopefully, and if you don't want to use your significant other in that way or they don't want you to use that way, please go talk with somebody, right? And I worked with a therapist, and I would recommend finding somebody you trust and having that dialogue
yeah,
on a regular basis, right? And it'd probably be one of these things. I also have I have some good mentors in my life too. That
yeah,
helps a
yeah,
lot. And but yeah, man, it's like it all blends together. I mean, and the gym is. We kind of get into the like, oh, the gym can be very therapeutic, but for a lot of people can also be like a thing that causes them a lot of grief, right? Or
yeah,
just
totally.
frustrates them a shit ton.
Yeah.
And it's like learning to let that stuff out is powerful. Well, and then the final thing, man, it's like, we're all so damn judgmental of like people in the 12 to
Yeah.
25-year-old. Like, there's so much going on in like a 14-year-old kids and even like a 22-year-old person's like head that they don't even know who they are. And a lot of
Yeah.
times, like, the world expects them to figure out all this shit that, like, like, it was honestly like my grandpa, like, life was hard, but like he had two choices in life: to be
Mm.
like a farmer or work in like the factory in town, right? And like again, that's not great, but it was like I kind of know what I'm doing,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
For us, it's
Totally.
like, what the hell are we gonna do?
Yeah,
Like, and you also have access to all this stuff, and it's tricky. And like I look back on like some of the kids that were really good kids in high school, but they were misunderstood or they just didn't have the opportunities. And it's like, yeah, like that's part of why I think weightlifting is hopefully going to become more and more prominent because we
yeah.
get people like access to kids who just can keep showing up and doing
Totally.
stuff and like seeing that they can improve. Like sports can be tricky because like if you don't get that initial hit that you're like good, it may not be the best that you're not gonna maybe stick with it as long as you can. Whereas like, you start off, one of my clients he's like a really good powerlifter. He couldn't bench the barbell the first time he
Wow.
ever showed up to the gym.
Yeah.
Right. And now he's like he benches like 170 kilos, like, and it's
Damn.
not hard,
That's big.
right? And it's pretty dope to think about that journey, like, right? So anyway, I'm just ranting now. But
No, I think it's great, and I think the reason why like a resistance training or strength training is very important is because it's agnostic. Like you can do it and you can color it a lot of different ways. You can dress it up. You can put this outfit on or that outfit, but like at the end of the day, it's like good load through your body.
yeah,
And it's like only unless it's pathological, it's like only beneficial.
yeah,
And that's why I love it. And I'm trying to get my mom to like lift weights consistently, and a lot of that is like I don't think you'll realize how it can impact your life until it already has.
yeah,
And that's the whole like inability to project into the future and imagine things that like we haven't experienced. Like resistance training has changed my life, and honestly, in like the most incredible ways possible, and like we'll continue to do that. Whereas like a lot of people might get into a sport and it'll also do the same thing, but sport is kind of like it's more like if you're not built for the sport, you're not going to do well. If like you want to play a sport and you're like you have like maybe you're bigger, more body mass or whatever, it's like it could be harder. Or if you're smaller and you have less body mass, it could be harder. So it's like more dictated by your build, maybe by your age, proclivity to get stronger. But like the weight room's never that. It's never going to be that.
yeah.
So I really like that aspect of it. Kind of transcends all body types and backgrounds and
No matter
those
who
other things.
you are, it's going to benefit you, right?
Totally.
Like that really is probably one of the things that I think it can be really so beautiful about it, right? If you
Yeah.
show up consistently and try. And even if you don't try that hard, like you're probably gonna get some benefit, right?
Totally.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
all right, I got 2 questions. I got like some
Yeah.
you got big ass books behind you. I think I see
Yeah.
Tolstoy, War and Peace.
Yeah.
Are these all do you just take these around with you wherever you move, or what's the deal there? Because I pretty much, dude, I went on a trip. I went to Ohio for the Arnold. I had 6
Yeah.
books with me. My wife's
Oh,
like, "Why are you
wow.
taking
Holy
6 books?"
shit.
I'm like, "Because I fucking like I don't know, I might read them." But yeah. So do you buy a bunch of used books, or like reading is okay? This is maybe a good kind of segue into like the end of this. But reading is
Okay.
probably, besides lifting weights, like reading
Yeah.
has probably been the most fundamentally beneficial thing I do in
Okay.
life.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Totally.
So, what are you reading now, and what are your big influences? I love that you're in Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Honestly, I'm like trying to make it through some Tolstoy. It's just like, holy shit, this is dense, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mentioned earlier on the podcast I've been like on an existentialism kick. So I'm reading Franz Kafka's The Castle. The last book I think I read, the last like physical book I read cover to cover is The Trial by Franz Kafka. I'm on a big like Albert Camus kick. So I listen to audiobooks. I listen to A Happy Death. I listen to The Stranger. I read cover to cover The Plague. And I am reading, I think Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, and then I think those are like the major books that I've kind of finished and I'm currently working on. And I'll say the things I really like about them, and I'm gonna get a little like philosophical, is existentialism deals with this idea of like creating meaning. And I won't say why because I'll try to be polite to the podcast, but like it tries to, ask questions related to like how do you create meaning in your life? Like how do you find meaning? And Albert Camus is like his meaning is like physical pleasures. It's just like human solidarity. It's like being good to people. It's like bathing in it's like being in the ocean, eating good food, like soaking up the sun, football, like soccer, and so it's like his meaning is like being good to people, enjoying life for what it is. And I like that. Like I think that resonates for various reasons. And those are kind of the books. Like they're kind of like not psychology. They're not really philosophy, but they're kind of like a cool intersection of it.
yeah, yeah. All right, I gotta ask you this because it's like the Dune 3, the third Dune movie trilogy that came out today. Have you read Dune?
I watched a little bit of it like 20 years ago, and I was like, "This is incredibly boring."
The old movie sucked.
Okay, that's what I watched.
The new movies are incredible, but the book,
Okay.
Frank Herbert,
good.
the Dune is like one of my favorite books, and
Okay.
it's just such a good intersection of like a fiction piece of work that also intersects. Like you probably like it because it'll make you think deep. It'll make you think a lot about stuff, and but it's so good. And the new movies are dope. They're incredible.
Okay.
But
Very cool.
but just going back to what do I have? I have the Myth of Sisyphus that I started, and I need to get through that.
That's awesome.
I like Camus. I think like I was a history major in undergrad, and then I graduated. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do with this? Am I going to be a high school history teacher? I was go to law school, and I did take a lot of philosophy, and I think that's one of the things I think we're missing in a lot of ways is just this depth of thinking that you just start to think through things from multiple angles, right? Or multiple seeing. I also like Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, neuroscience, and behavioral economics, and just like weighing pros and cons. It's like really, really powerful, and a lot of that just comes from being open to like exploring like some of the stuff that Camus and Kafka like say is kind of wild, right? Like it's like and so
it's really insane. Totally.
It's like these are insane people, right?
Well, and I think to that point, something that's really important, and you mentioned Daniel Kahneman, and I think it's really important to understand your own biases and why you think the way you do. And I think like a lot of that is just not taking your thinking for granted, which is so easy. it's like, oh, this is like a natural thing I was born into, therefore it's who I am and what I do. And it's like, no, that's kind of bullshit. It's like a
Yeah.
narrative. And you can
Yeah.
like peel it back and you can uncover it. And like, you don't have to think about that. I think like you can live. I'm trying to like attempting to practice this like non-judgmental approach to like people living their lives how they want. It's like you can kind of do whatever you want. For me,
Yeah.
this makes a lot of sense, and for me, it's
Yeah.
actually what I want to do. And if you ask my opinion, I might give you that.
Yeah.
But like peel back the biases, peel back the layers, like the stuff you take for granted, which is why things are the way they are. From like, you know, Franz Kafka wrote a book called The Trial, and it's basically Joseph K. wakes up and he's like, he wakes up and he's basically been told that he's under arrest for a crime that like he doesn't know. They won't tell him what he committed, like the crime he committed. They won't tell him any details. He's just under arrest, but like his life doesn't change. So he's like, okay, I'm under arrest. I need to figure out why. So he basically like susses that out and goes through this whole like bureaucratic system that doesn't make sense, and it's like fucking insane and crazy. And he ends up getting killed at the very end of it, which is like I guess is like the judgment. But it's like you're kind of born in this world that like can make a ton of sense or cannot, and it's kind of up to you to understand why. And I think that's like the heart of philosophy.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
and then we tell ourselves stories, and it's like let's start to like change your narrative, right? And you touched on something just really, really powerful. God, what did you say a couple minutes ago? Well, it's kind of like rewriting your own stories, but also like when you read something like Camus or Kafka, or just like you said that Dostoevsky, he hit like the euphoria of being told that how good of a writer what he was like sustained him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first books that like I think probably I would say really changed my life was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, right? And it's like how do you go on after the worst things in life have happened to you and your loved ones, right? And I thank God I've not had those experiences, right? But it still helps me contemplate like life and death and the meaning of things, and what's important, right? So it's like it's just powerful to like investigate these things. Dang it, I had a good question and then I lost it. What were you gonna say right there?
No, comments on that. There was a paper I heard Todd Kashdan, who he'd be great to have on your podcast if you're ever like interested.
Yeah.
Like clinical psychologist, but he talked about a study where they followed widows and I guess they like tracked happiness. I don't remember if they like tracked it pre and post. They would have had to have, but like they basically tracked like people their spouse had died, and they tracked like their happiness levels across time, and they showed a rebound. And like it's not to say like, oh, I'll never get over it, but it's like, no, people are very resilient, and even in the face of like the most terrible circumstances, like things kind of equalize or reach like this equilibrium. I think that's important for being able to see yourself through those very difficult, tough situations, which is like what training is, right? It's like, just because things suck on the first rep doesn't mean I'm going to stop, right after. It's like, this kind of hurts and it's hard. It's like, but I got 10 fucking reps to do. Like, I'm going to get to that 10th fucking rep and smash it.
It's kind of crazy too, because like I'm better at like doing reps than I am for 1 to 3. Honestly,
Sure.
I think I've kind of identified that, and it's something I'm gonna obviously work on doing 1 to 3. And I've squatted a decently heavy amount in like my powerlifting arc, but I've been doing basically like AMRAP squats, right? I also like tweaked my groin like a year ago, and then I sprained my ankle really bad playing basketball, so I haven't really had a great squatting. I just haven't been able to squat very well for the past like year, and I'm finally getting back where it feels good to squat again, which is nice, right? But like I got like an AMRAP squat, at like 125 or 130, which again is humbling, but like it's like, oh yeah, these first couple, but like, oh, now I'm on 7. Oh, now I'm on 11. Oh, now this sucks, like, right? And it's like just every rep is a new opportunity, and like every day, dude. It's crazy. It took a lot of reps, but like I think this is kind of where like some of the Navy SEAL mentality of just like get to your next meal, right? Make it through the day. Like, I honestly, there's a Dale Carnegie book which he wrote, How to Make Friends and Influence People, but there's another one that's called Stress Free for Good. And I don't know why the hell I was
Yeah.
reading this at like 22
Yeah.
years old, but I was. And one of the things that he said just helps you manage stress is just living in a day tight compartment, just taking it day by day, right? Have an overarching plan, have a vision, which that's another thing I think we could get into. We don't have to. I'm going to let you go because I know it's past. You probably got to go to bed. You probably got to be up early. But it's just like take it one day at a time, and
Yeah.
good things will happen, right? Have a plan, have a vision, but then take it one day at a time. And I think it's super powerful.
No, I love that. I think it's in my buddy Seb will say he's been trying to like be where his feet are, which I think is
Yeah.
kind of like a common saying, and
Yeah.
I think it's just super grounding. And I think I when in like tough situations, like tough mental situations for me, I just find those experiences that are basically what Dostoevsky talked about, which is like this like peak experience in my life, like using that as like sustenance to kind of get me
Yeah.
through to the next one. And I find that actually does help, and I find like practicing like gratitude or like things are really good on
Yeah.
the whole, and I don't have to
Yeah.
like necessarily just suffer because it's like this thing feels bad or sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's where like tying it back to the stoicism, it's like the situation is kind of agnostic to feeling. You kind of color it as so. You can color it as like this is shitty and terrible, or it's like all right, something I can just kind of get through and grow from and learn from.
Yeah, 100%. Man, I could keep talking to you for a long time. We'll have to do it again. Have you back on and keep chatting weightlifting and philosophy and all that type of stuff. But where can people find you?
Yeah, people are interested. You can follow me on Instagram at Josh_Phil WL. That's PHILWL. You can follow me at Philosophical Weightlifting everywhere else. I have a podcast. I have coaching that I offer and a host of other things. And if you just search on Instagram or Google Philosophical Weightlifting, I'm sure you'll find all of it.
All right, make sure you change your password, all right?
Well, I need to do it'll be Philosophical Weightlifting 2, but now that I
Yeah.
said that, I'll have to change it to 3
you
and
can do
then,
3,
so
yeah.
on. Yeah.
All right, brother. I appreciate you a ton. Thanks so much, everybody. Peace.